This is Iowa Talking Points, The Candidates, produced by Studio 5 at Mud Advertising, Totally Iowa Media, and News Talk 1540 KXCL, where you hear from the candidates in contested races in the June 2026 Iowa primary election. Now, Iowa Talking Points, The Candidates. From Studio 5 at Mud and Cedar Falls, here is Jeff Stein.
Hello and welcome. There will be a new state auditor in January of 2027. It's an open seat and currently the only statewide office held by a Democrat. There are two Republicans who are running for their party's nomination to be on the November general election ballot, and one of them joins us here today. Abigail Maas is a Republican who is running for state auditor. Her website is maasforiowa.com. She's currently an Iowa County supervisor involved in farming and business ownership. Welcome to Iowa Talking Points. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for having me.
Why did you want to run for statewide office, and why state auditor?
Well, I'm in the belly of the beast when it comes to local government. Through being a supervisor and then also being certified through our state organization, I've had the privilege of mentoring other supervisors and elected officials across our state. So I feel like I have a pretty good snapshot of what's going on with the property tax system. And through that, I've identified a lot of flaws in the auditing. Number one, not every tax dollar is being audited. And I find that can't be happening. We've got to stop this, because if I was a business owner or as a business owner, if I did not go back and check to make sure where I sent money made it there or it went to where it's supposed to go, I'd call that throwing money in the wind. And so I think we've got to treat government more like business and make sure every dollar gets audited. And then cities less than 2,000 in population, it's super variable how often they're required to be audited. Most of them are getting them done once out of every 8 years. And if you think about it, us as taxpayers, we have to go through our books on a yearly basis and report to the government how much money we made, so that way they know how much money we owe them. But then we're going to let local government go 8 years before they're accountable back to us. And I think that's a huge issue. And I want to change Iowa code. Obviously, I have to work with the legislature to do so, but I want to change the code to require an audit on every entity and on a yearly basis. So those are really, just seeing this fraud and this, lack of oversight at the local government is really what made me want to run.
It's interesting when you mention the 8 years, because in some places, the mayor, the city council members, they serve for 2-year terms or maybe 4-year terms. So you could have a complete turnover of local government, and no one's ever looked at the books during their time in office.
Absolutely. If you're coming 8 years later and you had 3 city clerks, going back and, number one, sifting through 8 years of data is quite a lot. I think a lot of people think that just because they're so far apart that they're cheaper because they're not going through as much data. They're still going through all the data. So there again, that's another thing that we need to raise value to and attention to, that we are paying for audits based on the hours of the employees that are performing them, whether you're a private company or the state auditor's office. And we've got to start making these things more efficient so that way they can save tax dollars, but also I don't want to encumber the taxpayers by taking on these audits that I'm proposing.
We think we know what the state auditor does because it's in the name, but give us a sense, what does the office do that's constitutionally provided for, but what would you like to see the office of the state auditor do if you are elected?
Well, of course, they audit the entire state. So that's not a negotiable. That's in the code. That's a requirement of what we do. And then from there, with local government, it's if they want to contract with the state to have their audits done. From my understanding, a lot of people are not contracting with the state because, number one, the audits aren't being done timely, and number two, they're actually more cost prohibitive than the private companies. I just saw in Madison County, they had a comparison of private versus state, and the private was much cheaper. So that, in theory, we should be able to take on more of these local governments, but we're not right now. And I think a lot of that has to do with efficiency and then just all the other duties that they're performing right now.
So if the private sector is underbidding the cost of the audit to the state, you would think that the state might be able to add staff and pay for itself if they just act a little more competitive. Have you done any sort of analysis of staffing to see what it would take to do what you're talking about, which is audit everyone every year.
I don't know how many it would take extra to hire on, but I do know right now they have about 125-ish employees in that office. And I think one of the things is not only maybe we don't even have to bring more people on, but can we get more value out of the employees that we currently have? Right now, they all work, or most of them, I should say, work from home. And we all know what work from home looks like. And it entails doing laundry in your breaks and doing different things. I think that's a huge issue. So I actually sat down and had a meeting with some people in charge of some of the buildings and grounds. And the Hoover building has an entire floor with 100 desks ready to go. Wouldn't cost anything to the taxpayers. And I want to model what DAS did. They brought the employees in 2 to 3 days a week because he wanted you to be able to work for the state from any corner of the state, right? And that makes sense. You don't want to have to require everybody to be a Des Moines city rep, right? So I want to value that, but also bring everybody in on a, at least a couple days a week basis, just so that way the seasoned employees can help the new employees, and we can get that sense of vision and camaraderie, and hopefully get more output from the employees as well.
DAS being Department of Administrative Services,
Yes.
and they're the folks who have been working with the consolidation of government, the reorganizations, et cetera, over a period of time. Because of the fact, and you mentioned Des Moines-centric, there are some of us who live in the outlying areas who have a little problem with that sometimes people in Des Moines think that's the center of the universe, and we like to point out there are 98 other counties. Is there a way to, with what you're just describing, make sure that the auditor's office and its employees are just as responsive to people in far northwest Iowa as far southeast Iowa?
Well, I think we have to start taking on some of these requests, because I know a lot of entities, or even just citizens that have complained or put in a tip in the auditor's office, they get kind of brushed off right now because they don't have the time to do it, or they're getting told 18 to 36 months before they'll get it done. And we can't continue down that. If somebody has a genuine concern, especially if they're an elected official or an employee of the county and they're trying to, blow a whistle, we've got to start paying attention to that. But it all starts with good leadership and increased efficiency.
What experiences have you had as a county supervisor interacting with people in other counties? Because we often talk about fraud, and some of it is willful on the part of perpetrators. Some of it is ignorance about accounting principles, sloppiness, etc. How pervasive of an issue is it that if you do conduct these audits, you're going to find a lot of things that aren't the same as what your bank might require your small business to be held to a standard of?
Well, there's a lot of thoughts there. So first, if we're going to come in and do these audits, I don't know that, I can't guarantee that we're going to find massive amounts of fraud, right? But what I want to start doing is focus on the gray area spending. And by that, I mean things that are not explicitly illegal, but not the best use of taxpayer dollars. I'll give you an example. I was on my 99 county tour, and a county supervisor from that county came up to me and asked, how do I stop massages being given on county taxpayer dollars? My jaw hit the floor. It wasn't Johnson County either. And it's just crazy what's going on. There's so much gray area spending. Now, is that black and white illegal activity that the auditor's office is going to say this is illegal? Technically, under some of the flex and the health, accounts that we have, maybe it's permissible. I would have to look at the exact how they're doing it. But at the end of the day, that's the kind of stuff that is really meaningful when we talk about property taxes and property tax relief, is targeting these gray area spendings, because people want their services and they want them locally. Law enforcement, EMS, they want to have their county recorder and their auditor, nearby to go to. So I think that it's important, if we're really going to look at the state as a whole and what's best for the taxpayers, we got to start looking at that gray area.
And at the very least, what you're able to do, I suppose, with that is to find out this is a gray area not anticipated by the law. It needs to be tightened up. And that's where you get into concert with the legislature to say we at least need specificity so everyone has clarity.
Yes, that, and just having transparency, let the taxpayers know. We could have some kind of debriefing or an article in the paper afterwards. Just this, here's the facts of some things that we found that we thought were questionable.
Now, as a county supervisor, with your experience with the budgeting and disbursements, et cetera, Do you find that there are some municipalities, some counties who perhaps themselves need a little refresher course on how to tighten things up a bit?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I think a lot of it stems from the lack of data and the lack of good software. So that's another thing that I want to do as state auditor is implement a statewide software system that is for accounting purposes for schools, cities, townships, and counties. Anyways, all of the entities that are levying our property taxes, I want them to be on the same accounting system so we can eliminate the variables. Because right now, when I come to your county and help you with your budget and I ask for reports, I might get ABC or XYZ. I don't know which one I'm going to get. And that makes it really hard and difficult to sort through financial data if the software is not speaking the same language and the reports aren't just uniform. So with that software system, I want to increase the efficiency as well. I want it to do the heavy lifting. I want it to be monitoring every single line item and have a notification system that goes off when something's $5 short, instead of finding it 2 to 8 years later if you're a small town and it was $500,000 short. I think that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the auditor's office. So then now when we come in, or if you're a private firm, you can come in and start to look at the paper trail, which is oftentimes we don't have time to look at much paper trail just because it is so time consuming. So I want to be able to do that. And then lastly, when we come back to transparency, I want to turn that thing online, let the taxpayers see exactly dollar for dollar, line item by line item, how all of their hard-earned money is being spent. Because I think that's the real way we root out fraud, waste, and abuse, is by giving the power to the taxpayers, give them that data so that way they can see and they know who's spending their money wisely and who's not. And then in the same breath, for those of us that are elected, coming back to your question, that data, we need that too, because a lot of us are flying blind mid-year because as a county supervisor, a city council person, you don't really, or even a school board member, you don't have access to the accounting. We don't have a computer that we can go log into and see what's going on. You have to encumber your auditor or your city clerk or your superintendent to get the information that we should have already. So this is also designed to help the local elected officials make good decisions as well.
When we come back, we will talk a little further about that concept of the computerizing and transparency and all of the things that might happen if Abigail Maas is elected to be state auditor. You're watching Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Short break now, back in a moment.
All the great news talk programs you love from KXCL on your radio can be with you wherever you go.
I'm Todd Starnes.
This is Mark Levin.
I'm Tim Harwood.
Bill O'Reilly here.
I'm Kim Commando.
Hey, it's Glenn Beck.
I'm Jeff Stein.
Just download the free KXCL mobile app. You can find us in the App Store or Google Play. Make sure you never miss a second of the conversation. Download the KXCL app today. It's a great way to stay connected to where Iowa comes to talk.
One opportunity. Change your career. Mudd Advertising is hiring product specialists. $18 an hour, paid weekly. That's 52 weeks a year plus record-breaking profit sharing. Let me repeat, $18 an hour plus record-breaking profit sharing. But we're just getting started. The best in the business, 401k, company match, gold standard health plans, on-site fitness center, generous paid time off, and so much more. Apply today and don't look back.
You're watching Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Here again is Jeff Stein.
Welcome back to Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. I am joined by Abigail Maas. She is a Republican running for state auditor. And before we took the breaks, you were talking about a way to integrate uniform software so that the city governments, the school districts, the counties could all be on the same basic platform so that people could more easily audit, people could more easily make good decisions as office holders. How big of a lift do you think that might be to get people across the state to buy into this when some of us, at the very least, are afraid to have a revision of any software because we're going to have to relearn something?
I get that, and there might be a little resistance on that part, but for the most part, when I have traveled the state on the 99 county tour, the locally elected officials love this idea because they're tired of not being able to call, their neighboring supervisor and ask a question or, so generally they're pretty supportive of this, and I think that they're ready for some change because a lot of us are operating on really clunky systems. And, some people like to talk about, oh, just put AI on it. Well, I can tell you right now, solutions you could not put AI on. That's what's running about half the counties. So I think a lot of us really value having something that's a better product than what we had. And the Iowa State Association of Counties has put out RFPs to do a statewide software system for them. I know the League of Cities has looked into it. So this isn't a unique thing. And I think that we're already kind of starting the ball rolling there through these associations. And that's who I'd want to bring to the table anyways when we put something out, because I want it to be genuinely a good product.
So let's talk a bit about you personally. You're a native Iowan, native of that area, as I recall.
Iowa Township of Iowa County, so I like to joke I'm the most Iowan in the room.
That would be the case.
Yes.
So tell us about your background and what brought you to this point ultimately to run for county supervisor and now state auditor.
Well, I had gotten involved locally through a few issues in my county, and I started to attend all the supervisor meetings, and I just saw what seemed to be like a good old boy network and a lack of decision or discussion at the public level. And so I saw a lot of issues too about rubber stamping things. Everything was yes, yes, yes. So I decided to put my name in the hat, and I took out a 22-year incumbent who was the police chief of our largest town. It was not the easiest fight, but I was able to do that. And then ever since then, it's just been a lot of learning. I was not welcomed on the board when I first got elected just because their friends were still there. And so it was actually the most advantageous thing for me because instead of going off of this is how we do it, I went to chapter 331 and read the Iowa Code on county government. And I learned this is how we actually have to do it. So that was really good. And then through that process, just going to the ISAC events and things like that, I started to get involved, got certified, then ended up being a mentor to the other county supervisors. So it's been a really broad range of experience. Then a few years ago, I bought a business. I think you wanted to talk about that. I bought a flooring store. The couple that had it for 28 years, and they were looking to retire, and I was looking to diversify some farm income. And so I decided to buy it, and it's been history ever since. I was able to bring massive efficiency to that, so that to this point, I don't even have to be there on a daily basis. We used to have what we did was a paper and pen system it's a flooring store. And so if I had jobs for the next week, I'd have to write it all down on a piece of paper, call them all and make sure that we're still good to go, then get those pieces of papers to the boys at the warehouse that are going to install it, and they'd have to go and show them where it is. Well, now through this app that I found, we are able to do everything through the app, communicate with the client from start to finish, from the day that they're thinking about their flooring till the day that we've wrapped it up. And it's helped because now the installers have all that information. All of my employees that work the office have it. It's been a really great way, and it's probably cut down 25 hours a week of work for me. So
you had the farming operation, family farming, and decided to, and this is not uncommon in Iowa, diversify a bit, have an additional source of income. So you've got the elective office, you're looking at state office, the business, family, etc. That's an awful lot for anyone. Mm-hmm. It sounds like the way you attack most of these is through finding efficiencies as opposed to taking someone's word for it that this is how we've always done it.
Yes, efficiency is the goal. I am a little bit of a workaholic and obviously I have a lot on my plate, and everyone always asks, how do you do it all? I don't know how you do it. And it's really about being really efficient with your time and compartmentalizing it, but then also having good key employees that can manage things for you and then have software and efficiency practices within that.
The business, no doubt, gave you some new experiences with customer service, not that you didn't necessarily have it previously. And I'm wondering how being a small business owner, in addition to farming, which is very much a business, in addition to a way of life, but how did that help you as an elected official? Because again, the rap always is that you don't look at the taxpayer as a customer or a client, they're just a revenue source. Those who do county government badly. Mm-hmm. So how have these experiences helped you in your elected duties?
Well, first, the customer's always right. You have to bring that mentality to the boardroom sometimes, even when they are saying things that might not be the most truthful. You just can't go and tell them that they're wrong. So you learn how to be a little bit more suave with being a business owner, but then also with just dealing with finances and treating the taxpayer money like it's not my own. And that's how I've always done that. I'm actually more conservative with the tax dollars of my community than I am with my own business. And I'm more generous in there just because I have a hard time spending other people's money. I have a really hard time doing that. And so for me, it's always difficult, and I take a lot of time weighing out the decisions and if I'm going to vote yes or no.
You point out on your website that you are a conservative. What does that mean when it has to do with the office you're seeking? Because again, people use labels, and I like to have people tell us, what do you mean by that? What does that mean as state auditor?
Well, state auditor really probably should not be a partisan office. I think it just causes more issues than it does good. Really, you should be in there saying, do the checks balance or do they not, and keeping your nose out of anything else. However, that obviously is not the way it is right now, and we have to face the reality. So having a conservative state auditor, I think it brings a little bit of an advantage because I am one of those that I'm looking for any way that we can cut costs or, get more efficient with our spending. And having a state auditor there to help guide some of these local governments and even the state government, having that bird's eye view and having that vantage point, I think is going to be really beneficial.
I also noticed from your website, you're actively engaged in farming, but you also are involved with horses.
Yes, I have a horse boarding facility as well. I used to show a lot. I don't have time for that now. I do put some things down, but I used to show. We have a nice herd of horses. I like to ride when I can, and the kids like to get on too, so it's really nice.
And it would appear to me that you learn patience with regard to handling animals like this. I don't have the patience, I don't have the skill set with animals, but I have to think that there are times that sort of training, not to mention children, may be helpful when you're dealing with squabbling board members or elected officials.
Yeah, I would say it's almost a double-edged sword. It's patience, but you also learn grit and how to be really dirty tough. And, you've got a 1,500-pound animal that could easily throw you off and kill you, and you have to be kind of half crazy to even want to get on it. But, here we are. I do it anyways. And, you get that you sometimes do have to be really patient with them, and sometimes you just have to kick them in the butt and say it's time to go. So it teaches you a lot beyond patience, and like I said, it gives you so much grit. I'll give you a really quick story. Last year, I actually broke my back. My horse fell on me, and I broke my last 4 vertebrae. I still managed to get my kids off their horses, get the horses put away, get them fed, and then I finally laid on the couch until my husband found me. So you learn how to be really tough and how to push through a lot of things with horses.
Oh, my goodness. Well, again, I don't know that the training of horses is quite the same as working with lawmakers, but that is what we're going to talk about in our next segment. This is Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. We're speaking with Abigail Maas. She is a Republican running for state auditor, and we'll continue the conversation in a moment.
One opportunity. Change your career. Mudd Advertising is hiring product specialists. $18 an hour, paid weekly. That's 52 weeks a year, plus record-breaking profit sharing. Let me repeat, $18 an hour plus record-breaking profit sharing. But we're just getting started. The best in the business, 401k, company match, gold standard health plans, on-site fitness center, generous paid time off, and so much more. Apply today and don't look back.
Watch all the programs in the Iowa Talking Points series online at iowatalkingpoints.com. Iowa Talking Points, the candidates, continues with Jeff Stein.
And welcome back. We're joined by Abigail Maas. She is a Republican running for state auditor online, maasforiowa.com. And before we took the break, we were talking about working with others, which is obviously necessary in any form of government. You're a county supervisor in Iowa County, so that's something you've had experience with. Give us some examples of the skill set that you have that allows you to work with potentially 99 counties, all the municipalities, and then also 150 lawmakers, some of whom may not be of the same party affiliation as you have?
I think my biggest asset that I'll bring is research. I research everything to the ninth degree. Anything that I am making a decision on or thinking about doing, there's facts. Obviously, I rattle off a lot of numbers here already today, and it's a huge advantage when you're trying to sell somebody, because you can argue all day about policy and, different emotional appeals, but when it comes down to numbers, I've always found that numbers or people lie and numbers don't, and so that's why I always find my standings to try to persuade people.
As you try to convince someone who starts out with a different viewpoint that they should come around to your way of thinking, either voting on an issue or, as you mentioned, as state auditor, you would be suggesting legislation and needing to have support. Give us some examples of the skill set, the problem solving that you're able to do that helps you as opposed to someone who might not have that same set of qualities.
Well, I already have some good rapport with our legislators and with our local elected officials, so I feel like that's going to be an advantage there, but also just the ability to present common sense legislation. And that's what mine is. My plan and my ideas have been wildly supported by both Democrats and Republicans. I've found very few people that have any kind of resistance to it. So I think keeping the emotional appeal out of everything and just focus on the facts and deliver the facts to the people will help bring them along.
Now, you indicated that the auditor's office perhaps should not be a partisan office because, again, numbers are numbers, but it is a partisan office. You, if elected, would be a Republican, and chances are you would have a majority in both the House and Senate, a Republican majority in both chambers, because the margin right now is so large, I don't think anyone is thinking that will change. Do you have a sense of what it would take to help move some of these common sense ideas, because they're common sense to you, they may be common sense to people with an R by their name, but we're in a hyper-partisan atmosphere, and sometimes those from a different party don't find common sense to lie the same place you might.
Well, that's the thing here again. Both parties have been very supportive of my ideas, and I don't think that they're going to balk at it too much. I think the biggest thing that I need to demonstrate to really knock this out of the park is the savings in the taxes, because nobody wants taxes to go up for all these audits. So I need to be able to demonstrate that, and I'm actually working on a model of software right now to be able to show that. So I think as long as I can show them that it's not a tax increase, we'll have it done.
With regard to some of the spending that you have either heard about or seen firsthand in your experience, how much of it is just sloppy? Going back to something we talked about a bit ago, how much of it is sloppy as opposed to how much of it is, shall we say, purposeful misspending? Sometimes that's criminal. Sometimes it's, again, to buy comfy chairs for offices that just got comfy chairs a year ago.
Yep. I don't think a lot of it is actually intentional. And I think a lot of it is just not having the right information. So as supervisors, we see our claims every week, but that doesn't tie into their line items and where they're at with their budget. So you don't always get the full picture. And so I can see where, or you may not remember that office got redone last year. So I don't think a lot of it's intentional. Most of us that run for local elections are not out there to be bad actors and, really harm the taxpayers. I think it's just a lack of information and a lack of oversight.
How political can you get as a state office holder? Because there is a fact that you'd be running for re-election in 4 years.
Oh, don't remind me.
I know, one election at a time. Look at this. I've just jumped to 2030. But there's a sense of partisanship that just permeates Capitol Hill in Des Moines, and I'm just wondering, is there a role for that in the office, or does that only come out every 4 years?
At the point where we're at right now, I don't see any need to be partisan. I see the need to be true to myself, which is fiscally conservative and honest and focused on information and data. I think as long as I stay focused there, it doesn't matter what party I'm in.
There have been some allegations or conversations that because the current office holder is a Democrat, the legislature has done some things to tie the hands of the auditor. He's been very clear about that, saying certain accounting procedures, his office cannot do the job they want to do. None of that's a surprise. He's been very public about the comments. Do you think that there is any impediment right now to doing the job the way you want to do it? And again, you don't know until you get into it to see what other legislative changes may be necessary, but are you aware of anything right now that would stop you from doing everything you just said you wanted to do?
I am not. I've had a few conversations with previous employees of the office, and they seem to think that things are fine the way they are. And then I always come back to the private companies are held to the same accounting standards as the state auditor's office. Clearly, they're not screaming mad about it. So I feel like we're okay. But I am open to the idea if there really is issues and the employees bring them to my attention, I'm open to helping solve that problem as well.
There is a potential problem. I think it's worse in Washington. I could be wrong, that once you get inside the bubble or you get inside the dome, or to me, I call it the Capitol complex, there's sort of the same good old boys network, and there are plenty of women there, but it's the same good old boys network that you talked about in your county of Iowa County. What can you do as an individual to try to keep some filters up, to try to make sure that you have the independence and integrity and be true to yourself that you're coming into this with?
Well, I think there again, come back to the facts, come back to the numbers. That's just where that's where you can't lie. And so that's what we're focusing on, or we should be focusing on as state auditor, is focusing on numbers, not on policy. So if you stay to what we're supposed to be doing, I think we're going to be okay. And I'm pretty tough. So I've been offered to run for other offices before I was ever going to do this. And I don't think I ever could, because I could never be bought or owned by any caucus or anything, just because, this is what my party thinks. I have to be this way. I'm not that way. I'm way too independent. So this is why it's a perfect fit for me, because it is an autonomous office and it's not even involving with the political charades that are going on.
Of all offices that should be able to stand alone, it's probably the one that deals with facts, figures, and numbers.
I'm a numbers girl.
Now, you're here in this conversation because we are talking with all of the candidates in contested primaries. So separate your skill set, your vision, etc., from your opponent. In other words, Republicans who are going to cast a vote in the June 2nd primary are going to have two names from which to choose. Why should they choose your name?
Well, I am the one that had foresight, even compared to both my opponents. I am the only one that had foresight. This isn't just a launching pad or a landing pad for me because my life circumstances have changed. This has been something on my radar for many years, seeing what's going on with our dollars. So I'm very passionate about it. I'm using it as a job, not a political title. And then I have that firsthand experience in the local government with working with budgets, with working with numbers. I also have experience leading employees across the finish line. When it comes to the county, I am essentially the HR lady there, which is not always the most pleasant job. And then even in my own business. So the state auditor really is the liaison from the office and what they're doing to the public and vice versa. And they are the department head. They're not typically the ones in the trenches. I do want to roll my sleeves up and get dirty with them a little bit, but overall, it's really a department head. And I think you need that leadership experience of managing employees, because that's not always the easiest job. And I have that knowledge, like I said, of the local government. My opponent did go, or has been going around talking about how she lowered the levy rate when she was on the school board. So one day I'm like, well, I know how this works in government. When you say I lowered the levy rate, did you actually lower taxes? And so I went and took a look the other day, and no, not in fact, they lower the taxes. They actually went up by over 30% in the time that she was there. And then I just looked at my time that I've been in Iowa County. We did lower taxes one year, and we've been pretty modest. And I think we were about 12% increase over the 6 years. So, it's one of those things where if you don't know that saying that lowering the levy rate does not mean lowering taxes, if you can't handle that, how are you going to handle the internal part of our financial system?
As you say, numbers are numbers.
Yeah.
We have one final segment with Abigail Maas. She is a candidate for state auditor, and we will get her final thoughts on this run as Iowa Talking Points, the candidates, continues after this short break. Iowa has a wonderful heritage, and each day I'll share these stories of historic people and events with you. I'm Jeff Stein. Join me for the Iowa Almanac program and learn more about this great place we call home. Now 7 days a week. Listen on radio stations across the state, via podcast, or at iowaalmanac.com.
One opportunity. Change your career. Mud Advertising is hiring product specialists. $18 an hour, paid weekly. That's 52 weeks a year plus record-breaking profit sharing. Let me repeat, $18 an hour plus record-breaking profit sharing. But we're just getting started. The best in the business, 401k, company match, gold standard health plans, on-site fitness center, generous paid time off, and so much more. Apply today and don't look back.
You're watching Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Here again is Jeff Stein.
Welcome back. One more segment in this Iowa Talking Points, the candidates program. Our guest is Abigail Maas. Abigail Maas is a Republican running for state auditor. You're currently a county supervisor, and we talked a bit about finding fraud or tightening up some of the looseness in accounting practices. Have there been things that you found in your county that really made you glad you took the job?
I'm glad you asked that question. So I was put on the Board of Health when I was initially elected, and that was the public health department was the one department out of 20 some that would not meet with me. When I first got elected, I wanted to sit down with employees and figure out their needs, and they wouldn't meet with me. So instantly my heckles went up, and I just kind of kept an eye, was watching how things were going. And at one point, 4 out of 5 of us resigned off that board in one day because we thought it was a liability to be tied to it. And I kept asking for questions about financial stuff and would never get answers. Well, I pursued them afterwards as a Board of Supervisor member. And it wasn't until I FOIA requested them on some financial records that something happened. We did end up having the public health director and the financial administrator resign, and they scrubbed their computers on their way out with our tax dollars. And we had many other issues all along to find out when we hired a new public health director that we had not been billing for our home health services that cost us over $500,000 a year to provide because we were avoiding audits. And then we had the first audit triggered in the headline. I think even the Des Moines Register, everybody picked it up. Iowa County leads the state in home health violations. And so I'm really proud of that. Through that process, the public health director did send me a cease and desist letter and told me that I was slandering their name when I was asking questions during our supervisor meeting and reporting back to what I was finding. And then I had the only Board of Health member that stayed on, who was the chair, send me a nice long email and saying how she doesn't want me or her dollars wasted on my position anymore. And I have both of those documents hanging up in my office. If any time that I get blue or I feel like I'm not doing enough for our county or for the citizens, I go back to that office, and that's one thing I can hang my hat on and be really proud of, because it was not easy to keep fighting that amongst all that resistance in the newspaper going against me. But I persevered for the taxpayers because I care about them.
I hate to throw the I'm a lawyer part into the conversation, but if you're a public official speaking at a public meeting, you're protected from libel and slander, and it's probably interesting that people did not know that, the people who are accusing. Mm-hmm. Does the public understand everything that an elected official has to go through in a situation like that? Because again, good small county in Iowa, I'm from one as well, people know each other. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of pressure. And even if you're doing the right thing, there may be some people who just kind of turn their cart the other way in the grocery store when they see you.
I have a little bit of that. For the most part, the constituents are great. I don't really get a lot of complaints. A lot of people do support me because they know I am just so fiscally conservative, and I am the real no to most of the questions that we get asked. And people support that, and they see that. In fact, I think a lot of them are a little bit mad that I'm leaving. But I also have a handful of people that are probably happy if I leave, just because I am so conservative that, you know, I see a lot of opportunities to collaborate with public entities and private entities to share these services. And I know that's not always, or even eliminate some of the ones that aren't required by law. And that's not always the most popular thing, but that's okay. I'm entitled to my opinion. And I don't have board support for it anyways, but I always propose it and try to get things done, at least scratch the surface and get an idea going.
What is your feeling broadly about the role of government? And I ask it for two reasons. One, we've already talked about what it does it mean to be a conservative Republican, but we're also thinking of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the government. And there are a lot of people who are examining what the role of government should be. So give us just your sense very broadly. What role should it play in the lives of citizens? How broadly should that be employed?
I think it comes down to essential services. And we do need police protection. We need fire. We need ambulance. We have to have elections. There are certain things that the public has to have to function in society, right? I think our job is to fund those and maintain them to the level that's appropriate for the taxpayers. But then some of this other stuff that we've been kind of like looped into over the years, and I know the state's kind of starting to eradicate some of these services that maybe they shouldn't have taken on in the first place. We've got to start getting some of this the extra fluff off our backs, just because it's hurting the taxpayers. I hear all the time that people are getting taxed out of their home because of property taxes, and at some point we are going to have to address this in a larger fashion. And that's also one of my little goals with the software system, is now we would have the real data, because right now, I've been in the subcommittees testifying in favor of property tax relief bills, and I know rate capping is the only way for us to go through a true meaningful reform. But after that, let's take this data and see, where are the dollars actually going? What policy decisions could we implement and change that would affect the tax system? There's a lot more that we can do if we just had the data.
Well, you are asking voters to cast a ballot for you in the June 2nd primary. So I'll give you the last minute or so to speak directly to them as to why they should vote for you.
All right. I am asking for your vote in the June 2nd primary because I have a huge passion for this office. I work really hard at everything that I do, and this will be no different. I will make sure that your tax dollars are actually being watched and that they're being watched well. And I think together, through the transparency, through the systems that I want to put in place, we can get a better grasp on what's going on with our dollars, and then put the power back into the taxpayers, let you guys get involved in your local elections and your state elections, and figure out who's doing good with your money and who's doing bad.
Abigail Maas, thank you so much for taking the time to join us for this edition of Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Good luck in the election, and appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the close of this edition of Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Again, the primary election is June 2nd. I'm Jeff Stein. Thank you for joining us.
This has been Iowa Talking Points, the candidates, produced by Studio 5 at Mud Advertising, Totally Iowa Media, and News Talk 1540 KXCL. For more information on this series, go to iowatalkingpoints.com.